Hello and welcome back to CQ, the AWS Certification Quiz Show, here live at reInvent 2020. We are streaming to you on AWS On Air, and if you have any questions for us, please feel free to tweet us at AWS On Air. So thank you to Nick and Rob, as always. Hopefully a bit of fun coming to you now with a super special guest. I have with me today Mary, a good friend of producer John, so I'm expecting big things from you today, Mary, for this data specialist show we have coming up for all of you today. This does fall into our specialty area of exams, and Mary is hopefully going to give us a bit of a deep dive today. And I am so excited because, I'm in your hands today, Mary, hopefully going to learn a lot as our audience. So, Mary, why don't you tell us a bit about what you do here at AWS?
Thank you for having me. So my name is Mary. I'm actually a specialist TAM. So I'm actually helping the enterprise support customers in driving operational excellence. So I actually worked with John previously, and that's how we get to know each other. And my specialty is all around analytics, anything under the hood, Redshift, EMR, Glue, Elasticsearch. So if you haven't checked out our Redshift news and features and announcement already, be sure to check it out because there's a lot of amazing new features coming. And I'm so excited that we're actually having another second region that's just announced yesterday, that Melbourne.
That's right.
In Melbourne, that we'll be having a second region open in the second half of 2022.
That's right, our second Australian region, and Mary is coming to you from Melbourne today. I'm here in Sydney, so welcome. Hopefully you're going to play along, hopefully lend Mary a hand if she needs throughout the show today. So what you need to do if you would like to play along with CQ, with myself and Mary today, is log on to crowd.live. And we've got our password or enter code for you today is AWS data. That's right, it's down there. It's on the screen throughout the show for you today. Please join us, play along, and pick the correct answer, hopefully, with Mary's deliveries today. So that was crowd.live. Log on your phone, enter the code AWS data. I'll give you some reminders as we go along. So Mary, are you ready to play CQ with me today?
Sure.
Awesome. All right, we'll have producer John load up the first question for us today. Now, Mary, you did mention Redshift as one of the I think it's in today's agenda, actually. So if you are interested in learning more, we have a bit of a Redshift theme going on in today's quiz, and also check out today's deep dive session so you can do a bit of a search for that. All right, Mary. There we go. We have question number 1 locked and loaded. If you've just joined us, quick reminder, log on to crowd.live from your phone, enter the code AWS data down the bottom of the screen there, and play along with us. All right, Mary, here we go. Deep breath. Question number 1, Amazon Redshift. Mary, an executive dashboard will be accessed heavily every morning between 9 and 10 a.m. These read-only queries will hit an active Redshift cluster running 24/7. It is expected that the Redshift cluster would process queries without wait time. What would be the most cost-effective way to ensure these queries get processed?
Tip for everyone, when we actually read out the question, try to pick up some of the keywords. So I'm actually looking at the question, and if I do have a white pen, I will actually mark every morning between 9 to 10. Read-only queries, an active Redshift cluster running 24/7 without any wait time. And I guess it's the most, double quote, most effective way.
Cost effective, yeah. So that's really key here. I like what you've done there, Mary.
So I guess we can actually rule out number 1 because classic resize usually take a bit of a time, and we don't actually need any wait time. So I would cross out number 1.
Okay.
B, automatic workload management is great, but it's not going to give us that extra burst of compute just for that particular 1 hour. So I have this tendency to go for C, which is concurrency scaling, because concurrency scaling allows you to scale up that extra burst of compute as required, and it's actually free for every 24 hours that a cluster has been up and running. So for now,
nice.
I'm testing C. D, percentage of storage. So storage will actually allows you to process a query, but it's not going to help you to burst that compute. So with that, I'm going to lock it in C, please, MJ.
All right, so there we go. We've locked in our first answer with Mary today. Question number 1, Mary is going with C. Why don't we have a check on where our audience is leaning towards, Mary, see if we've given them a good enough explanation. Okay, interesting. So they have locked in B at this point. Mary, any final thoughts before we check on the right answer?
No, let's lock it in.
Not swayed? This is a woman who goes with her instincts. I like it. She is not swayed. Mary is sticking with C. And there we go. We have the right answer. Mary, off to a flying start. It is indeed C. You can take a deep breath. 1 for 1 so far, 100%. For any of you who have just joined us, please join in with our quiz today. Log on at crowd.live and enter the code AWS Data to play along. And you can pop in your answers there. With that in mind, let's jump to question number 2 with Mary today, our big data specialist. All right, question number 2. Here we go, Mary. Hopefully you got a bit of courage now that you're 1 for 1. We are designing a QuickSight dashboard using centralized sales data residing in an Amazon Redshift database. The sales team members are only allowed to view their own country's sales figures. This means a salesperson in Sydney would be able to see the Australian view, while a salesperson in New York is restricted to seeing US data. Cool, makes sense. Mary, how would you ensure such data security is in place?
Well, we don't take security, we take security very high at Amazon, right? So I guess going through the process of elimination, just trying to understand what the question is asking for. So if we are actually looking into the QuickSight dashboard, so first thing I would highlight is like QuickSight dashboard, their own country sales. And so we know we have a salesperson in Sydney and one in New York. So first thing that comes to mind, if I actually look at A, implement row level security in the underlying sales table in Redshift, sounds like a good one. But I think it's a catch because we have column level security, not row level security at this moment. So I'm not going to circle that.
Oh, nice. It's a bit of a distractor there that Mary's just been able to point out for us. I like that, Mary. What do you think of B?
B, it's very similar to A, right? So it's actually a very good distractor, or it's actually the actual right answer. So
I like that.
And that looks like the right answer, but let me just go through C and D so that I can eliminate the other 2. So create a view in Redshift restricting users to own geography. That's great, but we won't be able to do that in QuickSight and dashboard easily. And similar to D, create a view in QuickSight. It's creating a view. It's not allowing you to tell the QuickSight who's actually logging into the QuickSight and the data that the user has access to. So
that's right.
So in that case, I'm just going to circle in B. So can I lock in B, please, MJ?
So locking in B. So we are getting rid of C and D because view security resides in the database. We're getting rid of A because that's our distractor to the right answer today. I like that. I really like down the breakdown. We've done a lot on the anatomy of a question recently, Mary. I don't know if you've been watching with us. We've actually done a lot of that recently. So I really like how you did that. Maybe you have been watching. So Mary is locking in B. Let's check where our viewers are voting for question number 2. If we can bring that up, please, producer John. There we go. Okay, so most people actually gone with D. Hopefully we've explained why it's not going to be either view answer. Let's reveal the right answer. Awesome. There you go, Mary. 2 for 2. Not being distracted by our viewers' votes at the minute. I like this. We have a good specialist with us today. So, Mary, are you ready to go on to question number 3?
Yeah.
Let's do it. I think we have kinesis coming up. So let's have a bit of a look at this. Always a good one to talk through. How's your kinesis knowledge, Mary?
I think I'm pretty good. Pretty good.
I love the confidence. This is great. We have so many nervous guests on the show, and I'm just not even sensing that from you at all. It's really exciting. So here we go. Mary, you use Amazon Kinesis Data Firehose to receive a constant stream of Twitter data and want to output the data to a dashboard via Amazon Kinesis Data Analytics. Ooh, mouthful. You need to output the count of tweets every 5 minutes. Each tweet must only be counted once. So, Mary, which windowing function should you use?
So I guess
I like this question.
Yeah, I guess the whole purpose of this question is trying to understand what it's asking for, right? So we know there's a constant stream of data coming in, constant.
So things like stock market data, Twitter data, like we were talking about, GPS locations. Yep.
Like smart device streaming data. So I think the important point to understand is we're actually looking at the constant stream and every 5 minutes, right? The stream every 5 minutes, and it should only be counted once. So if I look at A, so we know for a fact that we're actually looking for some kind of a window strategy, right? Within Kinesis. Now, the first one that I'm just going to rule out is going to be D, because I don't think there's such a window called grouping. It's a good distraction.
Oh, nice catch.
It's sort of distracted you, right? You wanted to group it, but it's not. I think
okay. Well, why don't we go a bit differently? Let's quickly check in if anyone's locked in any answers now, seeing as you just got rid of that one. I'd be really interested to see what answer people are going for. If we can bring that up, please, Producer John. No, okay. Oh, there we go. I think we confused people. Oh, I love that. I had a feeling, actually. You are absolutely right. The question does make it sound like that's what you're looking for. So this is another great opportunity to get a few tips from our guests this week on how to answer our questions. So sorry, Mary, back to you. Let's look at A, B, and C, shall we?
So I think whoever wrote this question is a very good exam question writer, because you need to make sure that the distractor, it's so confusing. It's so hard to make a distractor that looks so real. So if I look into A, the second windows is actually more for a streaming of data that comes in consistent time. So it could be staggered. So I'm just going to rule out A. B, sliding window. It's good because it means every 5 minutes it's sort of grouped the data. So B looks right to me. C, tumbling window, it's more for the non-overlapping window. So I will actually B. Can I lock it in?
So can I ask you a question then that makes me think, when would we use a slide-in window as opposed to a tumbling window, Mary? Can you talk us through that?
Yes. So tumbling window is when you actually have, it's not a constant stream, but there's actually non-overlapping. So it could be 1 minute to 3 minutes, and then from 5 to 7, from 5 to 10. So that's not overlap at all.
So we're going to lock in B, the 5-minute sliding window. Let's quickly check if anyone has changed their answer. Okay, good. I think you're getting people on board, Mary. We have 50% now locking in B, which is the right answer. Fantastic. How are you feeling, Mary?
Okay.
Only 3 down. We got plenty more to go. All right, let's do it. As a reminder, if any of you have just joined us, welcome back to CQ, the AWS Certification Quiz Show. If you want to play along with us, log on to crowd.live from whatever device you're using today, and your enter code is AWS data. Okay, nice and simple for you today. With that, let's jump to question number 4 with our guest today, Mary. Back to Redshift, Mary, just up your alley. Here we go. Your Amazon Redshift cluster of DS2 nodes has growing storage requirements while query performance is stable. You prefer to keep as much data in the cluster as possible without having to tier it into the data lake. Mary, which approach would give the best separation of storage and compute with minimal operational overhead?
Okay, so if we are looking into what the question is trying to ask us, right, we wanted to separate the storage with minimal operational overhead. And yet, in the second sentence of the question, we actually want to keep much of the data in the cluster without having to tier in the data lake. Now, for those that's on the line, DS is what we call the dense storage. So it's already have a lot of storage in place, but it's actually sitting in the same cluster itself. So if I look into A, if we are trying to separate the storage and compute, we would not want to add more dense storage node, right? Because so I can actually eliminate A. B, move all the data into S3 and query using Redshift Spectrum. That's a good distractor, but at this stage, we're actually looking into the separation of storage and compute with minimum operational overhead. So if we're to move the older data into S3, that's actually quite a bit of work to identify the older data and move them out. So C, swap the dense storage node to dense compute. So C is a good distractor, but at this moment in time, we're looking into separating storage and compute. So if we look into D, the dense storage with no RA3. So RA3 is what we have announced at the last reInvent, which is
this time last year,
last year, where we actually separate the storage and compute as a separate new instance for Redshift. So with that, can I lock in D, please, MJ?
You absolutely can. Nicely done. Oh, and we've already revealed the answer before we jump to the audience. So absolutely correct with D. Thank you so much, Mary. And fantastic. Our audience is 75% with you on that one. So you've had a climb on who's agreeing with you, Mary. I like that. Let's jump into another one, shall we? Let's move on to question number 5. All right. Here we go. Serverless. A bit of a change up here, Mary. Your developers have written a small Apache Flink application to enrich IoT data before storing it in your data lake. Where could you host this as a serverless solution? And Mary, before we even jump into that, maybe you can tell us all what Apache Flink actually is.
Sure thing. So Apache Flink is actually an open source streaming framework developed by Apache. So on the AWS data services, we have something called like the Kinesis data stream. So Apache Flink is like the open source equivalent streaming processing framework. So, and you can actually deploy Flink on AWS using EMR, but it's not serverless. So with that said, I can actually quickly eliminate C because we're actually trying to host this serverless solution. So if we look into A looks like a pretty good distractor, but it's not because like with the streaming data with Apache Flink, it's not going to be writing in the S3 event. So I'm just going to cross out A right away.
Okay. Yep.
Glue streaming ETL. Okay, Flink is actually like a streaming processing framework, but at this point in time, Glue streaming does not support Flink. So I'm going to cross out D. And
nicely
with
done.
Data analytics, so this Kinesis data analytics allow you to run your code against your streaming. So, and we can actually use this across your Apache Flink application as a source and a destination. So with that, I will lock in B, please.
Let's check in with our audience where they voted on this one. I definitely learned something new on that one. So thank you very much, Mary. Okay, good. Another 75% agreeing with Mary. Is that the right answer, please? It is. All right, 5 for 5. And I think we can jump into another question. We're flying through these. Mary, so take your time. Let's bring up question number 6. Join us at crowd.live. Your code is AWS data if you want to vote along with us. All right, Mary, here we go. Question number 6. Your company wants to quickly enhance a mobile application with embedded and interactive data visualizations. What architecture can provide this with capped costs, no infrastructure to manage, and minimal developer effort?
Okay, so I guess a lot of the company now with their own, a lot of the data, they will actually want to incorporate a lot of those dashboards into their own application, right? Without having to do extra development work. So the question
we're seeing this a lot more, right, Mary?
Like with no capped costs. So that's a key point that we need to take into consideration when you actually look at the distractors. No infrastructure to manage. So if I look into A, have a batch process render the customer-specific data visualization as static images stored in S3. That to me, it's like a good solution, but not in this age, right? I mean,
okay.
live customer data dashboard, not a static image, right? So in S3. So we can cross out A pretty much. And B,
Okay.
aggregate the aggregate data and store in Amazon DynamoDB, render using DS3. Looks good, but it's not because we actually wanted with cap cost and no infrastructure. So, I mean, we don't want it to bring in another factor by bringing in DynamoDB, right?
Got it.
So if I look into C, leverage QuickSight dashboard embedding. So I know for a fact that QuickSight has something called the embedding SDK, which is behind the scene, we actually use a whole JavaScript SDK, and it's available on GitHub. And for enterprise support customer that's using QuickSight, they can easily just download and incorporate that into their own app. So pencil in C. D, ad hoc Athena query behind API gateway. D is right, serverless, but you can't actually render using the JC. So with the most easy, no infrastructure, and with the QuickSight, it's capped because it's capped by per user X amount of dollars per month. So I will actually lock in C.
Lock it in C. I like that. You basically talked us through it as if just using common sense for each part of the different options we had there. So quite a different way to look at it, but I think that works well, actually. Thank you, Mary. So we have, jumped up again. You've now got 80% of the audience on board with you, Mary. Good to see. Good to see. And C is indeed our answer. All right, Mary, are you happy to do, I reckon we can fit in one more question. Are you happy to stay with me for question 7?
Yep.
All right, let's do it. Let's finish with data warehousing. An administrator receives about 160 CDC files every day into Amazon S3. These will be loaded nightly into a 4-node RA3 4 extra large Amazon Redshift cluster. The loading is taking much longer than the first initial load, and the administrator needs to speed it up. What will help speed up the load process? Over to you for our final question, Mary.
Cool. So what's important here to understand is we're trying to load about the same amount of data into the same table, because if you look at the last sentence, right, it's taking longer than the initial load. So that means the table is already there. We actually just wanted to append some data in. So that will be the key important factor in trying to understand what the question is asking for. So to speed up the load process, we can actually use the copy command. So A is incorrect because if we actually load the data in order, it's the right command. It's actually the copy command that we're trying to load. But the thing is, with using the sort key order, what that's going to do is we actually eliminate the need to vacuum the table after the loading. So
got it.
Copy command is right. So if with A being the copy command correct, B is not correct. There's no such command. We don't use an insert statement to load into Redshift. So we can pretty much eliminate B. And if we actually look at D, I mean, if we go by the process of elimination, right? So we can pretty much eliminate B. And if we look at D, right, use a copy command with load fast. I wish there's actually a load fast or run fast option, right? But it's a pretty good distractor. So I'll eliminate B and D right now and A. And C, the COM update. So the COM update, what it does is actually it sort of compute and analyze the table that you're trying to load into. Because the table is not new, we don't actually have to compute this update the stats already. So I would actually pick C, please.
Picking number C. Let's see if we manage to get 100%. Oh, we dropped down again to 67%. Agreeing with you on this one. Let's reveal our final answer. It is indeed C. Mary, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really cool to get some insight into one of our specialty exams. And today that was the data analytics exam. So thank you, Mary. Thank you all for joining us. There we go. Our producer, John, has just brought up our winners for today. We have a joint first place and a couple of knowns from our last show. So thank you for rejoining us. The two of you, and congratulations, 4 out of 7 correctly. Definitely a more tricky exam we looked at today. So with that in mind, I'd like to thank Mary, and I'd love for you all to stay tuned on AWS On Air. We have an awesome industry live session coming up next for you to check out. So stay tuned for Industry Live with our great manufacturing team. Thank you, everyone. See you again soon.
See you.